Hey folks, this is Kalani. The very first boss of the new patch 9.1 raid, the Sanctum of Domination, became available for testing, so we had a good old poke around to see how things are shaping up. In this video we'll go over our first impressions, what abilities we've seen so far, and what you'll need to do to kill this boss. The first boss of the raid is none other than the TARRAGRUE himself, and I think this is going to be a fantastic introduction to this new raid as a whole. There is a very interesting mechanic for this boss fight. Before you engage the boss, you need to kill 4 big adds in the surrounding area. These adds will leave behind a massive Anima orb, and if you click on that big orb, a little Anima Power orb will pop up nearby, exactly like the Anima Powers in Torghast. You can use them to select an actual Anima Power from a few choices. Every orb seemed to give 3 options, and I'm pretty sure they were all rare powers, so there's definitely going to be some crazy potential in here. We had things like 12% haste or crit or verse. Primary stats increased by 30%, but you can no longer jump. Some of our raiders saw the power that empowers your jumps so you go flying with every jump. There were damage increases while moving, reduced cost of abilities, 90% reduced AoE damage taken. I'm pretty sure most of the rare Torghast powers were available, and you get 4 of these to choose and play around with. We are going to have Anima powers from Torghast to fight a raid boss. There was even one that makes you knock back anyone who moves within 2 yards of you, so there's definitely some trolling potential here that you're gonna have to watch out for. You can reset your Anima powers at any time by using the Anima Siphon pillars just outside the boss room, then run around to each of the 4 big orbs again to pick up some new powers. Right now the powers are random, so every time you go back to the orbs you might see different powers, which I don't really think is a good idea. I can see players wasting a huge amount of time resetting their powers over and over again until they get the really powerful options or the option they want so they can troll the raid. I think the Anima powers are going to trivialize a good portion of this fight on normal and heroic modes, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It does set up this first boss to be a lot of fun. As far as abilities go, it looks like we'll be stacking up for the vast majority of the fight, which is why those knockback Anima powers are specifically problematic. The only ability you'll need to spread out for is Predator's Howl. This puts a magic debuff on several raid members, and those targets will have a purple circle around them. If any other player enters that circle, they get feared for 8 seconds, so these need to be dispelled as quickly as possible. Mass Dispel also worked really well for clearing these off the board instantly. The one ability that does look to be a key problem in the fight is Chains of Eternity. The boss focuses on a random target for 8 seconds, then throws chains towards them. The chains will hit the first target they come into contact with and pull that target into the TARRAGRUE, dealing a crazy amount of damage and stunning the player for 30 seconds if they somehow manage to survive. It seemed like this just insta-killed anyone who got caught without an immunity, so the only way to play around this seems to have someone with an immunity stand between the boss and the chain target to take the hit. That feels kind of bad though. I believe just being immune to stuns would be enough to negate the chain, so anyone with a stun immunity, or if you pick up the Anima power that makes you immune to stuns, you should be able to block the chain as well. The other main ability to watch out for is Remnant of Forgotten Torments. This ability is marked as heroic only, so I guess you maybe won't have to deal with it on normal when the raid goes live. 3 different remnants can appear in the boss room. They look like a swirly AoE zone on the floor. When they become active, you can see up to 5 orbs swirling around inside them. To get rid of this ability, you have to soak those orbs. You can soak as many of these orbs as you want, so you can have 5 players run over to get 1 orb each, or just have 1 player soak the entire thing and get 5 stacks. That's going to depend on your group at the end of the day. If the Remnant is Upper Reach's Might, while the orbs are not soaked, they each give the boss 10% increased physical damage for a total of 50% if you don't soak at all. Any player who soaks an orb will take 10% more physical damage per orb soaked for 1.5 minutes. If the Remnant is Mortregar's Echoes, it's the exact same effect except for magic damage. So the TARRAGRUE deals 10% more magic damage per orb not soaked, and anyone who soaks takes 10% more magic damage per orb soaked. The last Remnant is Soulforge Heat. This one is a bit different. While the orbs are not soaked, the entire raid takes constant AoE damage. The more orbs that are in the Remnant, the more damage the AoE does. Players who soak an orb take constant fire damage every 5 seconds for 1.5 minutes. Spreading these debuffs around your raid is probably the most ideal way to handle the soaks, and you probably want your tanks to avoid soaking whenever possible. If any of your players end up with stupidly strong defensive Anima powers, they might be able to take every single soak, but again, it's really just going to depend on your raid team. There's also the Hungering Mist ability. The TARRAGRUE will cover the entire area in darkness and periodically deal enough AoE damage to one-shot you. There are small openings in the darkness that are safe, so you'll need to run to those as a group and stack tight. After having to find the safe spot 3 times in a row, the ability ends. This one was particularly annoying if anyone had the knockback Anima powers, because they can kill the entire group with a single well-timed knockback. What we found funny was if you have the 90% reduced damage from AoE Anima power, you can actually ignore this ability entirely. The boss will also cast Grasp of Death. This is noted as an interruptible ability in the dungeon journal, but we couldn't interrupt it at all, so this might be one ability that sees some changes before the raid goes live. It applies a hard-hitting dot to a random target that lasts for 40 seconds, so they're gonna need a lot of healing. There's also a fairly standard tank swap mechanic called Overpower that stuns the tank with aggro and leaves behind a big damage increase debuff. As long as your tanks don't hate each other and they're not asleep at the wheel, this shouldn't pose too much of a problem. The boss also has an enrage buff that can be quickly dispelled, so as long as you have a few DPS on their toes who can dispel enrages like hunters or druids, it shouldn't pose any problems, and right at the very end of the fight when the boss gets to 10%, it's going to turn into a massive burn phase. You lose all of your Anima powers, the boss deals 500% more damage, and you're just going to have to kill him before he kills you. Overall, it sounds like a fairly straightforward fight that you can have a lot of fun with. This might actually be entirely puggable on Heroic and Mythic in the first weeks that those difficulties come out. So that's our first look at the TARRAGRUE boss in the 9.1 Sanctum of Domination raid. What do you think from what you've seen so far? How do you feel about Anima powers actually being usable on this first raid boss? Leave all your thoughts in the comment section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon and to everyone who's subscribed on Twitch. You can see the names floating by on screen. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss another video. Thanks for watching, folks. Good luck and have fun, and as always, I will see you next time.